This program is recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. The audio for this program can be heard on WRFW-LP 101.9 FM.
The Westside is pre-recorded. Please do not call.
It's devastating to our families. It's devastating across the nation to have these kind of actions taken out against police officers and against citizens. We need to come together and be one of itself. And I think until we realize how important it is for all lives and how much all lives matter, this kind of thing is going to happen. No matter where we're at or what we do, treat people with respect and do good things for others. And I think a lot of this would take care of itself. But we need good laws down at the state and federal levels to stop this type of actions. And that's again where we need to be bringing people together. We sink our feet in the sand and nobody moves forward. So we need to open dialogue and end this kind of action.
All right, open dialogue, respect for one another. Scottie, your take on this? How do we keep what's happening in Dallas or what happened in Baton Rouge from happening in Madison, Milwaukee, or Menomonie-Eau Claire, New Richmond?
We cannot legislate behavior any more than we can legislate mental health. We have to look at these situations and be prepared for them. And when someone is drawing down on you, there's very little you can do to prepare unless you are armed. Mm-hmm. When we look at laws are only as effective as they are enforced. A better education of police and emergency responders to such situations, to the response of an angry citizen, and certainly a better education and understanding of citizens of the type of daily stress that emergency responders are in. Each time that they take a shift, it may be their last. The actions that have happened with questionable police shootings need to be investigated thoroughly, with all evidence being brought forth, not withheld unless it is part of the ongoing investigation.
And I'd like to follow up on that, and I'll start with you, Scottie, and I'll go to Randy Knaack. This type of a mass shooting brings about discussions of whether or not there should be certain military-style rifles available to the public, like the AR-15, which is the one that is getting a lot of attention. Do you think AR-15s, or what some are calling assault rifles, should be available for sale to the public?
The only use of an assault rifle would be in an assault situation. These, although common in the headlines today, are not happening in the neighborhoods. I don't see a need for owning an assault rifle, and I am a gun owner, and I enjoy going to the range, and I enjoy hunting. However, I don't believe that having an automatic rifle in my gun locker is needed nor necessary. These are weapons which should be left to the police. And yes, criminals will always have a way of getting them, but the less that we have available in the public creates a safer public.
And Randy Knaack, do you think that rifles, military-style rifles like the AR-15, should be banned from public purchase?
Well, the assault rifle is one of its own. Recently we had a truck ran through a crowd of people,
yeah,
and killed lots of people. So I wonder if there again, big trucks, if they need to be banned from populated areas, and so. Sometimes we have a knee-jerk reaction, and that can fend more problems than others. And I don't think any common, normal person needs an AR-15, a machine gun, a hand grenade launcher, or a tank, mm-hmm. And so, but like Scottie said, these weapons, one way or another, are going to fall into the hands of the bad guys. I think if proper education, training, again, the idle hands are the devil's workshop, they might say, and we need to give our people and our kids, more things to do that fend off some of this kind of action, and when we have terrorists come into the States, or have terrorists here in the States, even though they're being watched by the FBI, I think they need to be really watched. If they're on the watch list, we really need to be taking a look at these people. It's not the common citizen usually that's causing the problem. by having a gun or otherwise. It's a radical individual that's having a tough time of life itself. And so I think we need to take a look at all aspects. And I don't really believe the AR-15 is beneficial as far as to the population, as far as a hunting rifle and so forth and so on. But there's a lot of things that go along with that, not just the rifle itself. It's economics, and it's the way we're trained. It's the way we're educated. There's a lot of facets behind this, rather than just calling it an assault rifle, and it's the assault rifle's fault. People are the ones, and it's hard to teach morality, and that's the baseline, I think, behind a lot of today's needs, is the morality of people, and what are we faced with.
All right. And there was, in the wake of these killings, in the wake of what happened in Dallas, where I think it was 5 police officers were killed there by a gunman using not the AR-15, but a different type of rifle, Republican Assemblyman David Steffen of Green Bay, here in the state of Wisconsin, introduced a Blue Lives Matter bill that would make targeting law enforcement officers a hate crime. Do you think this kind of a bill would do anything to deter this type of violence? Randy Knaack, will start with you.
Well, I think.
Scottie.
Thank you. I think determining that it's a hate crime is sufficient. I think that the penalties are stricter. I don't know if it's kind of in the hands of the individuals that are wielding these kind of weapons and so forth and so on. At that point, it is hate. And it is hate for the police officers, or hate for people in general. And so a hate crime denomination is probably a good step in the right direction. However, I'm not sure if that's going to end all the problems that we're facing. These people, they give up their lives. A lot of times they go cause massive murder, and then they kill themselves. So I don't know if it's going to make a lot of difference or not to have this in place as a hate crime.
Scottie Yard, your thoughts on the bill that was introduced? It hasn't gone anywhere because they're not in session right now, but targeting police officers, a hate crime in state law. Do you see that as benefiting anything in this situation?
The bill itself would cover all emergency services personnel, and in a sentencing phase of any adjudication, it would broaden the spectrum for sentencing. It is a thought. However, when you have an individual who is going to go gunning for emergency service personnel, the penalty phase doesn't matter to them. Essentially, if they kill an officer or kill a fireman or kill an EMS person, they don't care. They're looking at felony murder, and it still does not matter. So enhancing the penalty phase, yes, it sends a strong message, but it does not deter the crime.
Right. With that, we've got our first caller, and again, we're not able to take calls live on the air, but we can definitely get your comment or your question. I'll read it and get it on the air. So Mac in Sand Creek has a question. Wisconsin is dependent on roads for the economy. What would each candidate do to improve and preserve roads? I've got some follow-ups on this. I'll start with you, Scottie Yard.
We've got some serious issues with the infrastructure of roads in Wisconsin, and certainly very, very serious issues in northwestern Wisconsin following the recent storms, where we're looking at more than $30 million in damages. There have been many suggestions made. I will tell you, I am against raising any of the fees for registration in Wisconsin because it only affects Wisconsin residents. There has been much discussion on raising the gas tax. In looking at a logical solution, it does affect, in raising the gas tax, everyone who travels in Wisconsin. Tollways have been very successful in Illinois. The southern part of the state is familiar with them, traveling back and forth from Illinois to Wisconsin. There are many innovative solutions which are coming forth in highway construction in the way of materials and the way that highway beds are laid. This is something that we need to take a look at. Most of all, we need to look very closely at the directed accounts within the transportation funds to see how funds are being spent throughout the state, and then prioritize, because unless we commit to infrastructure and roads, we're going to keep kicking the can down the road, and I refuse to do that.
And Randy Knaack, the same question goes to you. What would you do to improve and preserve roads? We've got a transportation funding deficit, the Republican governor and the lawmakers have borrowed to make up that. So what's
Sure.
your magic bullet
The magic
solution?
bullet? Okay, thanks, Rich. Well, first of all, yes, our roads are a travesty in our area, and a lot of the money is going directly to Milwaukee, from our transportation fund per capita, and that I think is wrong. We should take a hard look at how the money is spent, where it's spent, do a better job with the resources that we have. I'm not opposed to a gas tax. It could be an option. Being looked at anyways, because people that are traveling through your town, they're spending money on gas and so forth, and they're paying for the roads. I'm not in favor of toll roads, and I'm sure that other taxes across the board are not the answer. But I think the answer lies in proper maintenance of our roads, we need to take a hard look at new construction, and like Scottie said too, there's new innovative ideas out there that can prevent a lot of our road damage in the future. And I know that sometimes the band on trucks, heavy trucks, the freeze-thaw band, that's something that needs to be taken a look at too, because I think sometimes our roads are getting damaged by heavy haulers, that the roads just aren't made for that. And that's another avenue that needs to be taken a look at.
Today we're featuring the candidates running for the 29th State Assembly Democratic primary and running for the general as well. I'm joined by Scottie Art of New Richmond and Randy Knaack of Menomonie, two Democrats who would like to turn the 29th District blue after being in Republican hands for 10 years. The Randy Knaack and Scottie Art will face off in the August 9th primary, and one of them will move on to challenge either Republican Rob Staffschultz or Vince Trudell in the general election. On September 19th, here on the Westside, we will host a forum with whoever the winner of the primary for the Democrats and the primary for the Republicans are. They will be in the studios September 19th, so keep that on your calendar. 800-228-5615 is the number to call in. Now we focus a little bit on dairy, or on farmland, and Wisconsin remains one of the biggest, if not, I think it's by far the biggest dairy producer in the nation. Despite this, there have been statewide losses in available farmland in St. Croix County. There is an effort being made to push back against this farmland loss. Scottie Art, I'll start with you. This is an issue wherever you go. Development is gobbling up farmland. So how do you balance that? And does the state assembly, state senate, do lawmakers have a role in trying to maintain that balance?
When you're talking about an issue which is so local as the preservation of farmland, the state does have a hand in it in the preservation programs which are available to farmers. This does help families who may be at times struggling to keep that legacy farm going. The preservation program is absolutely essential. We see a lot of farmers and legacy farm families who are selling property for development. This is very apparent in St. Croix County. It will take a partnership of the farmers, local municipalities, towns, and villages to preserve the farmland that we have in St. Croix County and elsewhere within the state if we are to continue our farming legacy. It will also take a new generation of farmers to continue farming on those legacy farms, to continue the crops and the animals. We also have to address within that CAFOs, which are now coming into St. Croix County. Bayfield is dealing with the issue. A contained animal feeding operation does present a great risk to the family farm. And so this is something that is being discussed heavily in St. Croix County, as I know it is in Bayfield.
And Randy Knaack, your thoughts on the balance, or on what lawmakers can do or should do, or maybe they shouldn't do anything, in your opinion, to try to balance land for farmers, availability, and land for development, because this district is very unique in that the Twin Cities Metro is growing, and that a lot of people are living in Wisconsin, working in the Twin Cities, so there's need for both types of land use. So how can you balance that?
Well, first of all, Rich, I think that we need to take a look at marginal land, and marginal land versus cropland or agricultural land. I think we need to have a balance between really productive lands and the marginal lands could be used for developments and so forth. I think local control is real beneficial in this aspect. I think when you've got people in Madison and or other parts of the country making rules for your local area, it may not apply. I know we've had the same thing going on in Menomonie, and you know, it's real easy to cash in, and some of these family farms, you know, they're hurting, and maybe there's more programs that could be available for family farms, the small farmers, to help them and support them and make it more realistic that they can keep their farms rather than turning it into you know, housing developments and so forth. So I think, you know, with those things stated and with what Scottie said, I think it all works together to let's tie this thing together and go forward, but have a balance between the two.
I'd like to talk about environmental issues. A review of records at the Wisconsin Department of Justice, this just broke as a news story, I think, over the weekend. A review of those records show that prosecutions of polluters have dropped to their lowest level since 1994. Also, an audit of the State Department of Natural Resources shows that the DNR hasn't been reviewing or isn't able to review records of how large-scale farms, also known as CAFOs, are disposing of manure. Governor Scott Walker has said that his goal is to work with farmers and businesses before environmental problems occur, catch it before something goes wrong. Critics say that he's being soft on polluters. So, Randy Knaack, I'll start with you and then I'll go to Scottie Ard. Do you think that the state government at this point is giving polluters a free pass, or do you think that they're giving businesses some room to breathe?
Well, a lot of this stems from the cuts in the DNR. You know, they've been their finances have been chopped to the point where they don't have the manpower to enforce the rules and regulations that are currently in place. Number one. Number two, you know, as people, as citizens, as Americans, we need to take a look at what's really happening out there. The city of Menomonie, I'm proud to say that we've taken a positive approach to doing more with our lake and our river systems. We put on a farmer-led council now that takes care of a lot of this up north of us, directly north of us. We've hired a water quality specialist. We've currently just started dredging our bay in Lake Menomonie, one of our bays, and we're in the process of improving things in Menomonie, and we need others to get on board and do the same thing. So, you know, it's the wrong time for us to be cutting finances to the DNR, and it's the wrong time for us to turning heads away from you know, large polluters, being at large farms or large factories or what have you. It's time that we take a positive approach, and I think part of that is you know, putting the funding back into the Department of Natural Resources, but also as people being more cognizant of what we can do positive in the future to make a better result for our kids and grandkids.
If I can follow up on that, putting more funding into the DNR sounds great, but it's got to come from somewhere else in the state budget. Rising Medicaid costs, it's a big thing right now. You know, education takes a lot of funding, so any idea where that money would come from for going back into the DNR?
Well, a lot of the money for the DNR comes from the sportsmen's, and a lot of sportsmen's are okay with, you know, contributing more as long as the job's getting done. You know, there's been a lot of rhetoric that the DNR hasn't been doing this or the government hasn't been doing that, and that's a lot of the problem. You know, when we start denouncing our government entities for doing a bad job, that just hurts everybody in the long run. I think you know, fishing licenses, hunting licenses, the sportsmen's in general, you know, they're out there in the environment and they understand clean water and good environmental practices. So I'm not opposed to maybe taking a look at a hike in the fishing or hunting license fees and so forth and so on. But there's other avenues too. You know, the state needs to take a hard look at that 0.5% sales tax. In Dunn County alone generates about $2 million. So if there was a 0.5% sales tax from people coming through and buying products, it may not affect the local residents quite as much as possibly some of the travelers, and that would make a huge impact on our environmental needs. So, you know, I think there's other avenues, you know, that are available to us. We think we just need to have a broad scope and take a look at them.
And Scottie Ard, the first question that I asked Randy Knaack, of course I'll go to you with, do you think that the state lawmakers, or the governor, or some state agency secretary, you know, heads, are going soft on polluters or on the issue of environmental conservation?
We have never been at such a low for environmental conservation in this state as we are currently. Wisconsin has always led the way in environmental initiatives from La Follette all the way forward. We've had environmental initiatives, and those have fallen, they've gone to the wayside, and it's not simply due to cutting of the DNR funding. It is due to an attitude of the population and of politicians that it's okay, it's our time, we'll take care of it tomorrow. That doesn't work. Currently throughout Wisconsin, we have contaminated wells in Kewaunee. We have suspected contaminated wells in northwestern Wisconsin, and certainly an orange-yellow that is spreading through Lake Superior to the Apostle Islands. We have subject wells in St. Croix County which are currently being tested. This is contamination not just from phosphorus runoff from the agriculture or from your own fertilizer you're using on your yard. This is also coming from industry. It is coming from animal manure, which is not properly contained. We have a number of issues. The only way that we are going to deal with these issues and contain them and preserve Wisconsin is for everyone to get on board with this, for citizens to use their voice, to demand of their elected officials that we address these issues, and as independent citizens to address the issues. We have to put the pressure on so that the budgets are provided. And if you're asking where that money is going to come from, the state of Wisconsin refused federal funds for its expansion of Medicaid under the Obamacare plan. This is currently costing Wisconsin taxpayers an additional $100 million, and we are covering less persons for that amount of money. So if we did accept the federal funds for Medicare, we would have most of our budget covered for DNR enforcement.
800-228-5615 is the number to call. We can take your calls and questions, and I will basically read the transcript of your call or your question or comment to our candidates. We can't get you on the air live, but we can still get your thoughts on the air just the same. 800-228-5615. You can also post on the Westside Facebook page. Again, I'm joined by Scottie Art of New Richmond and Randy Knaack of Menomonie. These are two Democrats running for the 29th State Assembly District. 800-228-5615. Funding has, with state support for public schools being stagnant in recent years and being cut in years before that, more districts than ever before are turning to referendums for additional funding, and voters are approving them more often. In April, 71 districts held referendums, with more than 3/4 of those passing. That's way up than compared to 10 years ago. Is this a sign that state legislators should send more money to local schools, or that the caps on the levies should be lifted at the local school district level? Scottie Art, I'll start with you.
It's a difficult question for any school district and certainly for any municipality, because each time a school district raises its debt, the city is affected by that, as is the school district by the city, because when you go for your bond rating, those two taxing entities are considered. It's hand in hand. We have seen a great deal of referendums regarding school districts. Some have passed, some have not. I think what we need to consider is not so much that a district decides and determines that more room is needed, but how efficiently and effectively those buildings are being designed and constructed. Education can happen anywhere. Many of the developments that I've seen happening in school districts are way over the top. It's accessories and items that aren't necessary for the classroom. And when we have teachers bringing supplies into classrooms from their own pocket, we're not investing correctly. I do believe that we need to make a strong commitment to invest in the public school system within the state of Wisconsin, to bring it back to its #1 place where it had been for decades. A school building is not the end-all be-all to education. It's having strong teachers and the materials needed to teach students.
Randy Knaack, same question to you. Do you think that the fact that more of these referendums are passing is a sign that people want to spend more on their districts, whether through property taxes or through state funds?
Sure. Well, and it used to be that referendums were passed for new buildings or maintenance. Now it's they're being passed for a lot of the operationals. And that's a problem. When our school districts are having operational budget deficits, there's something that needs to be done. In Menomonie, I spent 6 years on the school board, and we had a good thing going. We operated kind of like with the, they called it the three-legged stool. We had a inflationary portion, we had a per pupil increase, and then 2/3 of the state was committed to picking up the tab, and that doesn't exist anymore. And so it really puts a lot of burden on the school districts to come up with the monies they need to operate. And of course then the referendums are now paying for operational rather than just building remodels and construction. So it's really been a travesty. A lot of our teachers now are moving to higher paying jobs in Minnesota and around the area, and we've lost a lot of great teachers. They're irreplaceable. So I have a lot to say regarding this issue.
There was, okay, let me start with it. Is it as simple as more money? Do you think that more money should be going into public K-12 schools like the Menomonie Area School District?
Well, I think the principles of funding has changed. We used to have a lot of amicable solutions in our school district, and as part of that was the QEO, the Qualified Economic Offer, where we could take the total package, and we were locked in. Though the state would put so many restrictions on us, we had to come up with at least a 3.8% increase, and so on and so forth. We couldn't give a teacher that was going out of their way to do a great job extra increases or benefits. There's just a lot of factors involved. We used to have collective bargaining in place in Menomonie. It worked fine, and I'm not opposed to collective bargaining in some schools. In some schools districts it wasn't working out so well, but in Menomonie we had years and years of collective bargaining, and it worked out just fine. And there was a certain balance attributed between the school board, the unions, the teachers, and so forth. And it was a camaraderie type of thing that we've got this problem. How do we deal with it? How do we solve it? And we ended up having amicable solutions to those problems. So I think at a local level, these things need to be met, and more funding in certain areas definitely. The main reason that a lot of the school districts are having such a problem now is with the benefits package. When I was on the school board, we sent out a resolution to WHWC, the Wisconsin Administrative School Boards, and with that we asked that we could take the long-term benefits package into account for the QEO, and things of that nature needed to be worked on. And with the proper steps being taken, I think we could have avoided a lot of the knee-jerk reactions that came about through Act 10 and so forth.
Scottie, do you think that this is a funding issue? Should there be more funding going into schools in New Richmond, Menomonie, wherever in Wisconsin, and if so, where would that come from?
The state funding definitely needs to be increased to all public schools throughout Wisconsin. We're spending money currently on a voucher program, which serves a very small percentage of students. It is not proving to be the best solution. When we look at our local districts, it is up to the taxpayers, the residents of that particular school district, as to what they want to invest in their public school. But the state can certainly help out every school district in the state of Wisconsin by having funds readily available. And certainly, with the passage of Act 10, we've lost a great deal of our experienced tenured teachers. And this is unfortunate, because every teacher deserves to have a classroom which is manageable, which would be 15 to 20 students rather than 40 students. We've allowed this all to go away, and that has done nothing but harm our students.
800-228-5615 if you've got a question or a comment. This is the Westside 29th State Assembly District Democratic Primary Candidate Forum. I'm joined by Scottie Ard and Randy Knaack. We'll be back with more in just a bit. Okay. So far so good, guys. Anything that I'm missing that you want to jump on? I've got a whole bunch of other questions yet, and we're running out of time.
We're just going to have to extend the program longer, that's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, hot topic is going to be frac sanding and
Definitely.
the wind turbine development in Forest. Those are two big. Forest is in the 75th district. However, it borders
The wind farm?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
And actually, it's someone. I think we can go that way right when we come back. What are they gonna do? Nothing. I'm Rich Kremer. You're listening to the Westside on Wisconsin Public Radio. I'm joined by Democrats Scottie Ard of New Richmond and Randy Knaack of Menomonie. These two are hoping to win the 29th State Assembly District seat, which has been long held by Republican John Murtha. He is retired. He is not seeking re-election, and now four candidates are, two Republicans, two Democrats, are hoping to take that seat. There's a primary August 9th, and then the winners of that contest, we'll find out who makes it to Madison in January. 1-800-228-5615 is the number to call. We had a call from Jenna in Menomonie. She called and says, have we thought of more innovative ideas for moving forward, sustainable energy-wise, educating businesses on sustainability? Some of the things that are highlighted here: energy, alternative agriculture choices such as hemp farming. And let me go to Scottie Ard first. What about, do you think the state needs to do more? We had I think it was called the 2020 plan, where the state had to get so much of its energy from renewable sources, wind farms, solar, etc. Do you think the state lawmakers need to do more to try to get us off of fossil fuel?
I think within the state of Wisconsin, we have an excellent opportunity to expand new technologies in green energy with solar panels, with geothermal, with wind turbines. However, the one area of statutory language that troubles me is the merchant plant language, which does not allow, it allows anyone, a dog food salesman, a pool salesman, to suddenly become a utility developer and owner. And this is an issue that we're seeing in the town of Forest, which is in the 75th district, but is adjacent to the 29th in St. Croix County. They are facing a development of 500-foot turbines, which are the largest in the state, in a town which is 36 square miles. And they're dealing with 41 of these. The town had no control over this. Statutory language allowed them to come in. I believe Wisconsin can be one of the leaders in green energy, but we have to be very careful about how green the energy is. Because in my mind, any time that you are tearing up the earth, when you are jeopardizing the car stock that we already have in this area, which is very fragile, this is not green. We need to look at resources that are green and develop those, because Wisconsin could be the leading business model.
Randy Knaack, would you like to see more done on behalf of the state with regards to renewable energy sources?
Well, I agree. Green energy is very important, but we need to take a good look at what we're doing. It's kind of like the wind turbines up in the Forest area. You know, I think a lot of it comes down to the bear effect. And the bear effect is, you're going down the trail real well, and you come across a bear, and you react on your emotions, and you take off and you run away, and the bear chases you down and eats you up. Instead, you might have been better off to pull the sandwiches out of your backpack and give them to the bear and walk away gently. So I think more thought needs to be going into these things. We can't just have a knee-jerk reaction like what happened up in the forest area. But I believe wind energy, solar energy, geothermal energy, there's a lot to be said for these things. And I think we need to take a hard look at what we can do in Wisconsin to be one of the leaders. Right now, we're falling behind the 8 ball in all the other states in all green areas, energy areas. So, Wisconsin, we need to step it up a bit and go green.
We've got a caller, Brenda from Emerald, asked about frac sand mining. I've got a question on that. And for years, there was a frac sand company that worked with officials in Glenwood City to get approval to build at the time it was a 400-acre frac sand mine. A group of citizens objected, forced recall elections, kind of remade the city council. The mine plans are on hold for now, but this just illustrates how controversial industrial sand mining is and has become. So where do you stand on it? Randy Knaack, I'll start with you. Again, it's jobs. Frac sand mining creates jobs for whether it's drivers or contractors, you name it. But at the same time, people are worried about dust, dangerous dust, and just changing the way of life. So where do you stand on that? And do you think that local control should be applied here, where local governments should be able to set restrictions that the state doesn't have?
Well, first of all, I don't think frac sand mining is the answer, number one. We need to get away from fossil fuels. It does supply jobs and so on. However, the oil industry itself regulates a lot of the pricing, and as soon as frac sand comes on board and everybody has a job and the trucks are rolling, OPEC says, oh, let's lower the price, shut these people down. So it's not a sustainable outlook, I don't think, regarding our fuel needs. I think we need to get off of fossil fuels. I think we should be taking a look at other areas that could be doing a better job in giving jobs to folks, local jobs. We need jobs that are of good pay, but that are steady jobs, not ones that come and go. You look at North Dakota, and what's happened out there. It was like a gold rush, and boom, all of a sudden it's over. So it's not sustainable. So until we can find sustainable means and good-paying jobs, I think we're kicking the can down the wrong alley.
Scottie Ard, what are your thoughts on the frac sand mining industry? Right now we're in a lull, but it's going to be increasing when oil prices do come around. Everyone assumes that they will. So you might see more mines or companies coming to town trying to open mines in, say, Glenwood City or elsewhere within the 29th district. So what do you think about the balance between jobs and environment and way of life there?
Anytime that we give consideration, especially in western Wisconsin, to any type of business or commercial venture such as frac sanding, which is going to be disturbing the soil horizons down to the karst bedrock, we need to give great consideration, because karst bedrock it's very easy to fracture. Our aquifers sit directly below that, so there is always that element of contamination that could happen. But we also have to look with frac sanding at the overall cost. We have a cost to our roads because of the tonnage of the trucks and the dual axles. We have a cost to the environment, not only because of the particulates, but because the EPA has now stated that they will not recognize dust as one of the elements coming from a frac sand mine. Dust is one of the greatest threats to anyone who has a respiratory issue, or certainly is a threat in developing a respiratory issue. We need to consider the people first before profit, and this is not what's happening. It all sounds very good and very green, and this is going to be something that we're producing in our own county, in the state of Wisconsin, but the long-range costs of frac sanding in this area are far too high. It's not the people who are making the profit, it is only the developers.
As far as education and cuts to funding for education, higher education has not been spared. UW Stout is located within the 29th State Assembly District. In the current biennial budget, there were $250 million were cut from the UW system as a whole, which oversees the state's universities and colleges. For UW Stout, it worked out to a reduction of more than 55 full-time equivalent staff. That's what it took to save the $4.5, almost $5 million that were cut from the budget. Also, Stout has gone from 4 colleges to 3. Do you think these cuts are hurting the quality of education that universities like Stout can offer? Scottie Ard, and then I'll go to Randy Knaack.
When we look at the university system as a whole, we're looking at 13 universities, 13 freshman, sophomore colleges, and UW Extension. We're looking at $15 billion plus that goes into the local Wisconsin economies for these university systems and colleges. It is unbelievable that the state legislature would ever consider cutting costs. They have essentially lowered the university system from being one of the top university systems in the world to a status of we're cutting curriculum, we're cutting staff because we have to meet a $250 million cut. It doesn't sound a lot next to $15 billion of input, but when you're dealing with a budget at a university, it is. Every penny counts. We need to invest in our university systems. It is the best going industry that Wisconsin has, and it is only going to grow and grow bigger.
Randy Knaack, your thoughts on the cuts to universities like UW Stout. Is it hurting quality?
Oh, absolutely hurting quality. It's a travesty to our students and to our education system. My son goes to the UW-Madison, and we're struggling to keep him in school financially, and what will it do to tuition in the future for our students? And yet we'll take our 19, 20-year-old kids that get in a little bit of trouble and lock them up and make them criminals at $32,000 a year. What if we gave that $32,000 and gave them a college education, and or gave a Joe Blow farmer $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to take some of these students? So it's a total travesty what we're doing to our education system. We lose these seasoned teachers and professors. They're gone. We don't get them back. We need to change that. That mentality it's totally devastating to our education system.
Changing gears a little bit here, I'm just curious on whether or not the candidates, whether you supported Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton in the presidential primary. Of course, Hillary's the presumptive nominee, but Bernie, I think, won the state by 13%. Where did you stand, Randy Knaack?
Okay, well, that's kind of an interesting question. The one thing I liked about Bernie, he said the same message the whole time through. I think he was a little bit overboard on some of the issues and maybe underboard on some of the other. And I think when you get that far out, you got to strike a balance and meet in the middle road. And I think that same thing with Hillary. I don't believe bringing in thousands and thousands and thousands of immigrants from another country is necessarily the answer. We need to support our own people here. I think each one of them had their views that were a little bit too far right, too far left, and hopefully, we strike a balance down the middle.
So it's all about party unity now. So you support Hillary Clinton for president?
Well, that's an interesting question. I guess that'll have to be my choice on the day of election.
Fair enough. Scottie Ard, Bernie Sanders was a phenomenon. Still made a lot of change in the Democratic platform. What was your take on Bernie v. Hillary? I mean, I know that's in the past now, but did you support one or the other?
I watched the race very closely because what we're seeing in this election year on the national level is a change that's happening nationally. Mm-hmm. We're seeing every end of the spectrum. There's nothing in the middle. And what I would suggest to all of the listeners out there, know your candidates. Study their platforms well. Listen to what they are saying before you go to that ballot box on August 9th or in November.
Hear, hear. I will second that. That's the time that we have allotted today. Thank you so much. Scottie Ard is an alderman on the New Richmond City Council and a Democrat running for the 29th State Assembly District. Randy Knaack is a small business owner and also mayor of the city of Menomonie, running for the 29th State Assembly District. Thank you both so much for the discussion. I'd also like to thank Team Westside, including Ellery Lowry, Mort Cypress for Hunter Production, Emily Colosimo for promotions, and of course Dean Collenbeck and Debbie Brown for their great wisdom. Next week, we'll welcome the Democrats running to replace Tom Larson in the 67th State Assembly District. I'll be joined by Dennis Hunt and Dennis Doty. Same place, same time. Thanks for listening. Have a safe and productive week. We'll chat again next Monday morning. Also, a big thanks to our ECB, Educational Communications Board engineers, Steve Bowder, Mike Mueller, Pete McLean, and Glenn Guy. You guys are amazing for getting us on the air today with the technical difficulties that we had over the weekend. Thanks very much. We'll chat again next Monday morning.
This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cvctv.org.